The operating room was not a room at all. It was a kitchen, a small, cramped kitchen in a fifth-floor apartment in AMBW, Seoul, and there was blood everywhere. Naia's gloved hands moved with terrifying precision inside the open wound of a man who should have been dead already. The fluorescent light above the stove flickered. A man in a dark suit stood behind her with a gun aimed at the back of her head. His voice was shaking worse than his hands. "Save him," he said. "Save him, or every person you love dies tonight." Naia didn't flinch. She didn't even look up, because she already knew who was lying on her kitchen table. She knew the feel of his skin. She knew the rhythm of his breathing. And she knew, with the kind of certainty that lives deep in the bones, that she was the reason he was dying. The heart monitor she had stolen from the hospital beeped once, twice, then it flatlined. And that is where this story really begins. But not here. Not yet. To understand how a trauma surgeon ended up operating on the most dangerous man in Seoul on her own kitchen table, with a gun to her head and blood under her fingernails, you need to go back 72 hours. That is all it took for everything to fall apart. Han Dokyum was not a man people talked about. Not because he was unknown, but because knowing his name meant you were already in too deep. At 37 years old, he was the ghost accountant of Seoul's underworld. Every crime family, every syndicate, every corrupt politician with dirty money ran their finances through him. He didn't carry a gun. He had never needed one. What he carried was far more dangerous. Ledgers, records, numbers that could bring down entire empires. He operated out of an elegant tea house in Bukshan village, a place so quiet and refined that tourists sometimes wandered in thinking it was a museum. They were always politely redirected before they got too close. Dokyum wore perfectly tailored hanboks every single day. Traditional on the outside, ruthless underneath. His reputation was built on one simple truth that everyone in the underworld understood. Han Dokyum does not threaten. He simply shows you the numbers. And then you do whatever he says. Men with guns bowed to him. Men with armies consulted him before making a move. He was untouchable, not because people feared him the way they feared a killer, but because every powerful person in Seoul needed him alive. Without Dokyum, the money stopped moving. And when the money stops, everything collapses. He trusted exactly one person in this world. His younger sister, Han Yuna, who managed the tea house and was the only human being who had ever seen him genuinely smile. But there was something else about Dokyum. Something his men never mentioned and his enemies never knew. 5 years ago, someone had stolen a ledger from him. One single book. The most dangerous one. The one that contained records explosive enough to start a gang war that would burn Seoul to the ground. He had spent 5 years searching for it. Every lead went cold. Every trail turned to dust. And yet, the thing that kept him awake at night was not the missing ledger. It was the woman who took it. Because before she was a thief, she was the only person who had ever made him feel like a man instead of a machine. Her name was Naia. She was 31 years old, Black American, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. And she was standing in the middle of a trauma ward in a mid-tier Seoul hospital performing her third emergency surgery of the night. Dr. Naia Brooks, trauma surgeon, top of her class at Howard University. She had completed a surgical fellowship in Seoul 6 years ago, and she never left. She spoke fluent Korean with a slight textbook accent that her patients found endearing. The nurses respected her. The residents feared her. She was calm the way a blade is calm. Still and precise and capable of cutting through anything. She lived alone in a modest apartment in AMBW. She worked double shifts 3 times a week. She ate convenience store kimbap for dinner most nights and studied medical journals until she fell asleep at her desk. Everything about her life said ordinary. Everything except one thing. Bolted beneath her bed was a floor safe. And inside that safe was the stolen ledger that every crime family in Seoul had been hunting for 5 years. She did not steal it for money. She did not steal it for power. She stole it because that ledger was the only thing keeping her younger brother Elijah alive. 5 years ago, Elijah Brooks was 21 and full of dreams that were too big for Atlanta. He came to Seoul chasing a future in music production. He was talented, genuinely talented. But talent without connections is just noise, and Elijah got desperate. He fell in with the wrong people. The Yoon Syndicate, one of the most violent crime families in Seoul. At first it was small. Courier jobs. Deliveries he didn't ask questions about. Quick cash. Easy money. Until it wasn't. Elijah lost a shipment. Not a small one. A shipment worth 2 billion won. The Yoons didn't kill him. That would have been mercy. Instead, they told him he now owed a blood debt, and they would collect it slowly, painfully, using him as a drug mule until the debt was paid or his body gave out, whichever came first. Naia dropped everything and flew to Seoul. She couldn't go to the police because the Yoons owned half the police force. She couldn't pay the debt because the amount was impossible. So she found another way. She learned that the Yoon Syndicate's entire financial operation ran through one man, Han Dokyum, and all of it, every record, every transaction, every secret, was kept in one physical ledger inside his tea house. So Naia did what no one had ever dared to do. She got close to him. It started at a hospital fundraiser. Dokyum was there because the hospital director owed him a favor. Naia was there because she was a resident surgeon doing her duty. Their eyes met across a room full of champagne and pretense, and something neither of them expected happened. It was real. 3 months of dinners at quiet restaurants. Long walks through Bukshan at night. Conversations about everything and nothing. He told her about the weight of being the man everyone needs, but no one truly knows. She told him about the loneliness of being a black woman in a foreign country, always proving, always performing, never resting. They understood each other in a way that felt almost cruel, because it was built on borrowed time and she knew it. She was falling in love with him. That was the part she never planned for. Then one night, while he slept beside her, she took the ledger and disappeared. She used it as a dead man's switch. She sent word through channels that if anything happened to her or her brother, the ledger would be delivered to the National Intelligence Service within 24 hours. The Yoons released Elijah. He ran to Osaka and built a new life. But Naia could not leave. She was trapped in Seoul because the moment she left, the leverage evaporated and both she and Elijah were dead. So she stayed, 20 minutes from the tea house, for 5 years, hiding in plain sight. And every single night, she opened that floor safe and looked at the ledger and remembered the way Dokyum's voice sounded when he said her name in the dark. That was the thing that haunted her most. It was not fake. None of it was fake. And she destroyed it anyway. Now, if this story is already pulling you in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. This is Afro-K Ruthless Love Stories, and this is just the beginning. We tell the kind of love stories that leave bruises, the kind they would never put on television. If you are new here, welcome. Subscribe, drop a like, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Naia was right to steal that ledger? Or did she make the biggest mistake of her life? Tell us. We read every single comment. Now, let us get back into it, because things are about to get dangerous. It was a Tuesday night when the collision happened. A gang shootout erupted in Itaewon. Multiple casualties flooded the emergency room at Naia's hospital. It was chaos, blood on the floors, shouting in the hallways, stretchers crashing through double doors one after another. Naia moved through the madness the way she always did. Focused, relentless, saving one life at a time. Then the last patient was wheeled in. A young Korean woman. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. A stray bullet. She was not involved in the gang war. She had been walking home. Naia looked at the intake chart, and the name hit her like a freight train. Han Yuna, Dokyum's sister. The only person in this world that he loved. Naia's hands did not shake. She did not hesitate. She scrubbed in, and she operated for 6 hours straight. She was brilliant. She was flawless. She saved Yuna's life. But when she stepped out of the operating room and pulled off her surgical mask, she knew what was coming. Dokyum would come for his sister. And when he did, he would find Naia standing in the hallway, 5 years older, wearing scrubs stained with his sister's blood. He arrived the next morning. Calm. Terrifyingly calm. 3 men in dark coats walked behind him, but he moved ahead of them as if they did not exist. He approached the nurse's station and spoke quietly. The surgeon who operated on Han Yuna. I want to see them. The nurse paged Naia. And when Naia stepped around the corner and their eyes met, 5 years collapsed into nothing. He looked exactly the same. The sharp jaw, the dark eyes that missed nothing, the stillness that most people mistook for peace, but was actually control wound so tight it could snap at any moment. Naia watched his hands. They were the hands of a man who held empires together with ink and numbers. And those hands, which had never once trembled in the presence of crime lords and killers, went completely still in a way that was not natural. He said one word. You. Naia held his gaze. Your sister is stable. She will need to stay for observation for at least 48 hours. She turned and walked away. Professional, measured, calm. The moment she rounded the corner and was out of his sight, her back hit the wall, and she pressed both hands over her mouth to keep from making a sound. He was here. After 5 years, he was right here, and the look in his eyes told her something she was not prepared for. He was not angry. He was wounded, and that was so much worse. Dokyum did not leave the hospital. He sat in the waiting room for 3 days while Yuna recovered. He did not ask to see Naia. He did not send anyone to find her. He simply existed in her space, a quiet gravitational force that bent everything around him. On the second day, his right hand, a man called Mr. Bach, a former National Intelligence Service agent with a face like a closed fist, delivered a file to Dokyum in the waiting room. Everything about Naia. Her real name, her address, her employment history, her brother Elijah's current location in Osaka. Mr. Bach sat down beside him. She is the one who took the ledger. Dokyum did not look up from the file. I know. Do you want me to retrieve it? A long silence. No. I want to know why she came back. Mr. Bach frowned. She didn't come back. She never left. She has been in Seoul for 5 years. 20 minutes from the tea house. Dokyum closed the file. And for just a moment, something crossed his face that Mr. Bach had never seen before. It looked almost like grief. Meanwhile, Naia was unraveling. Not visibly. Never visibly. But inside, the walls she had spent 5 years building were cracking. She called Elijah in Osaka that night. It is time to run, she said. Elijah's voice was sharp. No. Naia, no. I have a life here. I have a girlfriend. I have a studio. I am not running again. Eli, you don't understand. He found me. Then handle it. You always handle it. But I am done running. He hung up. Naia sat on the edge of her bed in her dark apartment and stared at the wall. She could not protect Elijah if he would not move. She could not run if Elijah would not follow. She was trapped. Again. She knelt down and opened the floor safe to check the ledger, the way she did every night. The safe opened. The ledger was there. But sitting on top of it, placed with deliberate care, was a single white tea flower. Dokyum's signature. His mark. He had been inside her apartment. He had opened her safe. He had seen the ledger. And he had left it there, along with a message that said more than any words could. I know where you are. I have always known. And I chose not to come for you. Naia's blood went cold. Then hot. Then something she could not name. Because if he had known where she was, and he did not take the ledger back, then what had he been doing for 5 years? The answer terrified her more than any threat ever could. He had been waiting. For her. Now pause for a second. If you are feeling this story, if your heart is beating a little faster, if you need to know what happens next, then do something for us. Like this video. Share it with someone who loves a good story. And if you have not subscribed to Afro-K Ruthless Love Stories yet, what are you waiting for? We are building something special on this channel, and every subscribe, every like, every share helps us bring you more stories like this one. We are just getting started. Now, let us keep going because the clock is ticking. On the day Yuna was discharged, she asked to meet her surgeon. Naia almost refused. But refusing would have raised questions, so she went. Yuna was sitting up in bed, smiling, full of warmth and light in a way that seemed impossible for someone who shared blood with Han Dokyum. They talked. Yuna thanked her. She asked about Naia's life, her work, how a woman from America ended up saving lives in Seoul. And then Yuna said something that nearly broke Naia in half. My brother changed 5 years ago. Something broke inside him. He stopped going to concerts. He stopped cooking. He used to cook these elaborate meals for no reason, just because he enjoyed it. He stopped all of it. He just works now. All day. All night. I thought someone had died. Maybe someone did. Naia could barely hold her composure. She excused herself, citing another surgery, and left the room with her chest tight and her eyes burning. That evening, Dokyum was waiting outside the hospital. Not with bodyguards. Alone. He was leaning against a black car in the rain. Naia stopped when she saw him. Walk with me, he said. That is not a good idea. I am not asking as someone who wants the ledger back. I am asking as the man you left in the middle of the night without a single word. They walked. Through the rain-soaked streets of Mapo, past convenience stores glowing blue and white, past old men smoking under awnings, past a world that did not know or care that two people who had once almost loved each other were walking side by side for the first time in 5 years. He told her that he searched for her for 2 years. Not for the ledger. For her. I have copies of every number in that book in my head, he said. I did not need the paper. I needed to know why you left. She told him about Elijah. The blood debt. The Yoons. The impossible choice. You had a choice, he said, and his voice was tight. You could have told me. I would have erased your brother's debt with one phone call. And then I would have owed you. And your world would have swallowed both of us. He went quiet. Because she was right. They both knew she was right. His world consumed everything it touched. He had built an empire of control, and the price was that everyone around him either served him or feared him. There was no room for equals. No room for love that wasn't leverage. And Naia had seen that truth before he did. That was why she ran. Not because she didn't love him, but because she did, and love inside his world was just another form of captivity. They parted that night without resolution. But something had shifted. A door that had been sealed for 5 years now had a crack of light under it. And both of them could feel it. Neither of them was ready to open it. But neither could look away. 72 hours. That is how long the peace lasted. Because the Yoon Syndicate had been watching. Yoon Taesung, the 28-year-old heir to the syndicate, reckless and cruel in the way that only men born into power can be, had noticed Dokyum's distraction. His people had been following Naia. They knew about the ledger. And Taesung did not want it destroyed. He wanted it for himself. With that ledger, he could control the other families. He could become the most powerful man in Seoul's underworld. So he made his move. Elijah was taken from his apartment in Osaka on a Wednesday morning. No witnesses. No noise. Professional. Naia received a photo on her phone that afternoon. Her brother, bound to a chair, one eye swollen shut, blood on his shirt. The message was simple. Bring the ledger to me. You have 72 hours. Or I start mailing you pieces of him. Naia's world stopped. Every nightmare she had ever had, every fear that had kept her awake for 5 years, was now sitting in her hands in the form of a photograph. She did the only thing she could do. She called Dokyum. They took my brother. Silence on the other end. Then his voice, cold and precise as a scalpel. The Yoons just made the last mistake of their existence. What happened next was not a war. It was a dismantling. Dokyum did not send men with guns. He sent information. Within 12 hours, he leaked Yoon financial records to 3 rival families simultaneously. He sent transaction records to the tax authority. He tipped off the National Intelligence Service about Yoon drug routes through Incheon. He called in every favor, triggered every trap he had spent decades building. And the Yoon empire began to collapse from every direction at once like a building with its foundations pulled out. In the chaos, Dokyum himself went to retrieve Elijah. Not Mr. Bok. Not his men. Dokyum. He walked into the Yoon holding facility with nothing but his phone and his reputation. Most of the guards had already fled. Taesung was still there, cornered, desperate, unraveling. Elijah was freed. But as Dokyum turned to leave, Taesung lunged with a knife. The blade caught Dokyum in the side, just below the ribs. Deep. Dokyum did not make a sound. Mr. Bok put Taesung on the ground. But the damage was done. Dokyum was bleeding. Badly. They could not go to a hospital. The police were raiding every facility connected to the gang war. Every emergency room in the city was a potential trap. So they brought him to the one place with a surgeon who would not ask questions and would not let him die. Naia's apartment. Her kitchen table. Her hands. This was the scene from the beginning. The blood. The flickering light. Mr. Bok with his gun, not threatening her, but terrified, unable to do anything except stand there and pray. Naia worked with tools she had stolen from the hospital supply room weeks ago, because a woman who lives the way she lived always has a contingency plan. No anesthesia, no proper lighting, no backup, just her training and her hands, and the man she had once loved bleeding out on her table. Dokyum was conscious for part of it. Through the haze of pain, he looked up at her. His voice was barely a whisper. If I die, she cut him off without looking away from the wound. You are not dying. I did not save your sister just to lose you on my kitchen table. Now be quiet and let me work. He almost smiled. Almost. And then his eyes closed. If you are still here, if you have made it this far, you are one of us. You understand what Afro-K Ruthless Love Stories is about. We do not tell simple stories. We tell the ones that grab you by the chest and do not let go. So if you have not already, hit subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment and tell us, do you think Dokyum will survive? And what do you think Naia should do next? Share this with a friend who needs a story that will keep them up at night. We are building this community together, one ruthless love story at a time. Now let us finish this. He survived. Barely. The next 2 weeks existed outside of time. Dokyum recovered in Naia's apartment because he could not be moved and there was nowhere safe to take him. Mr. Bach ran the empire remotely. The world did not end. And in that small apartment in Mapogu, something impossible happened. They were just two people. Not a ghost accountant and a surgeon who had betrayed him. Not a thief and her mark. Just a man and a woman sharing a small space and learning each other again. He insisted on cooking even with one functioning arm. The results were terrible. Naia ate every bite without complaint and pretended not to notice when he winced reaching for the soy sauce. She changed his bandages every morning and every night. Her hands were always gentle. Her eyes were always steady. But sometimes, when she thought he was asleep, she would sit on the floor beside the couch where he rested and just breathe. Like she was trying to convince herself this was real. He saw her life up close. The double shifts. The instant noodles. The medical journals stacked on every surface. The discipline of a woman who had been carrying impossible weight alone for 5 years without bending. She saw the phone calls on the balcony, the quiet calculations behind his eyes, the loneliness of being the man who holds everyone's secrets and has no one to share his own. On the 14th night, Naia opened the floor safe. She took out the ledger and placed it on the table between them. This kept my brother alive, she said, but it also kept me in a cage. I don't want it anymore. Dokyum looked at the ledger. Then he looked at her. He picked it up, carried it to the kitchen sink, and set it on fire. They watched it burn together, page by page, number by number. 5 years of secrets turning to ash. Now no one has it, he said. Not me. Not you. Not anyone. The leverage was gone. The Yoons were gone. The ledger was gone. For the first time in 5 years, there was nothing between them except a choice. He did not ask her to be with him. He did not promise to leave his world. He knew better. I will not ask you to live in my darkness, he said. But I need you to know that you were never just a target. And you were never just a mistake. You were the only real thing in a life built on calculations. Naia looked at him for a long time. She did not say I love you. She was not ready for that. Maybe she would never be ready for that. But she said something that meant more. Stay for breakfast. He stayed. The next morning, sunlight came through the kitchen window for the first time in what felt like weeks. Naia made coffee. Dokyum sat at the table with his shirt unbuttoned over his bandages, reading a newspaper like he had not just burned down a criminal empire and nearly died on this same table. It was quiet. It was ordinary. It was the most extraordinary morning of both of their lives. Then Naia left for her shift. She kissed the top of his head without thinking about it, the way someone does when the gesture is so natural it bypasses the brain entirely. She only realized what she had done when she was already in the elevator. She pressed her fingers to her lips and kept walking. At the hospital, the morning was routine. Rounds. Charts. A consult on a motorcycle accident victim. Normal life. Then the hospital director called her to his office. His face was strange. Careful. Dr. Brooks, there is a woman in the lobby asking for you. She has been here since the doors opened this morning. Naia frowned. A patient? No. She says she has been looking for you for a long time. Who is she? The director paused. She says she is your mother. The air left the room. Naia's mother had been dead for 11 years. Breast cancer. Naia held her hand in the hospice room in Atlanta. She watched her take her last breath. She delivered the eulogy. She was there when they lowered the casket into Georgia clay. Her mother was dead. Dr. Brooks? Are you all right? Naia's hand gripped the edge of the director's desk. What does she look like? The director glanced at his notes. She is a black woman. Mid-50s. She said to tell you something specific. She said to tell you she knows about the safe under your bed. And she knows what used to be inside it. Naia's blood went cold. Then hot. Then something beyond temperature, beyond feeling. Something that lived in the space between terror and recognition. Because whoever this woman was, she knew about the ledger. She knew about the safe. She knew Naia's real name. And she was sitting in the lobby of her hospital, waiting. Naia straightened up. She smoothed her white coat. She walked out of the director's office and down the long corridor toward the lobby. Each step was steady. Each breath was controlled. She was a surgeon. She was a woman who had stolen from the most dangerous man in Seoul and survived. She was a woman who had operated on a dying man on her kitchen table and brought him back to life. Whatever was waiting for her in that lobby, she would face it the same way she faced everything. Head on, hands steady, heart pounding. She pushed open the lobby doors, and the woman sitting in the plastic chair looked up, and Naia's entire world shifted on its axis one more time. If you want to know who that woman is and what she wants, then you need to be here for part 2. Subscribe to Afro-K Ruthless Love Stories right now. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss it. Like this video, share it everywhere. Drop a comment and tell us your theory. Who is this woman? What does she want? And what does she know? Part 2 is coming, and it is going to change everything.